Good morning, good afternoon everyone. Can someone tell me whether my voice is clear and is this screen clearly visible to you? Good afternoon, good afternoon. So I welcome you all to today's session, and COP28 is very important for every examination that government will be holding. Okay, so its importance, whatever importance that I will tell about it, it still will be underrated. See, this topic is essential with respect to any type of examination, be it civil services, be it IBP banking examinations, and be it regulatory body examinations, because COP28 in itself is a very important issue with respect to climate change or sustainable development. That is a common theme throughout every examination that we see. ठीक है, तो चाहे वो upcoming CSIR examination हो या SEBI, RBI, NABARD, civil services, for every examination this topic is hugely important. Okay, so that's why we will see comprehensively not only the global major highlights with respect to COP28, that what were the major aspects that happened in COP28, and apart from that we will see a little bit about India specific news. Okay, what exactly India had position with respect to COP28. Okay, and we will also see little details that usually are important with respect to regulatory body examination that they usually ask in prelims as well as phase 2 objective ESI. Okay, so bear with me. Okay, we will see every important aspect with respect to COP28, and we will also try to understand whenever there is a critical term over there is. Okay, so first of all, this is a very common news that this COP28 happened in UAE. Okay, Dubai, UAE, and it happened between 30th November to 12th December. That means recently it happened, and it spans across almost 12 to 13 days, and it discussed a lot of important agreements in between. Yes, green credit program is India specific. Yes, Karthik. Okay, and then obviously the membership in COP28 included 197 countries, but there will be some programs in which you will see that there are more than 197 countries that have let's say adopted a particular agreement. So don't think that only 197 countries you have mentioned as a member, but there are other countries that are right now not member, but they are allowed to stay in COP28 as an observer member. Okay, so these are distinguished features, so don't get confused with respect to the number of membership. Okay, but initially at the critical stage, just remember 197 countries as the key members of UNFCCC. Okay, and what is the important critical thing at this time? So it is the first time when countries formally assessed their progress under 2015 Paris Climate Agreement. Okay, so this is what does it tell you? See, there's a concept called global stock take that you will see here also. Okay, and global stock take, actually it's like a checking how much inventory do you have. Okay, so there's a particular target that you set in Paris climate, and what is that particular target? See here. Does anyone know what's the target set by countries in Paris Climate Agreement? In Paris Climate Agreement, one of the primary targets set by UNFCCC was we have to limit greenhouse gas emissions. We have to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions so as to limit the rise in global temperature up to what degree? Up to what degree? Does anyone remember? Up to, that is below 2 degree Celsius. Yes, correct. Okay. So this was the initial target, but apart from this, there was also one other target that apart from limiting it up to 2 degree, we also have to put in efforts, put in substantial efforts to reduce it up to 1.5 degree centigrade. Okay, and based on these targets, some of the steps were taken by the Paris Climate Agreement and by different countries. What were these steps? Let's say renewable energy, building renewable energy capacity and reducing the greenhouse gas emissions through different sources. Okay, all these aspects were actually taken as an initiative during climate change. Okay, and let's say these steps were taken. And global stocktake does what? Okay, those are, let's say 15 May, this was taken, and then today is 23. Global stocktake tells you that whatever progress that you have done from here to here, we are just checking that. And just checking that progress refers to global stocktake process. Okay, so in 28, hold on. So in 28 global stocktake, various important things were noted. So one of the things that were noted that we needed to cut 43% of global gas emissions by 2030 compared to 2019 levels. ठीक है, उन्होंने बोला कि देखो आपको 43% ग्रीन हाउस गैस एमिशंस को रिड्यूस करना पड़ेगा. ये तो पहली चीज. उन्होंने दूसरी चीज बोली that you are off track in meeting the climate goals, that all the countries are right now off the track, that they are not doing enough to achieve the targets under Paris climate. Okay, so these are the important things that were actually noted down by the global stocktake. उन्होंने जितना भी progress every country has done, okay, so they have checked those progress and they have checked the projections of those targets, and they have realized that whatever they are actually right now doing are not enough. So that's why they have said that you need to reduce 43% and you need to do these 8 steps also. Okay, they have listed 8 steps to limit or to achieve the targets under Paris climate. Okay, so for you, the important thing for all of you is, for the examinations, are you have to remember these critical details that the global stocktake under COP28 noted. ठीक है, 43% reduction by 2030 and up to 2019 levels. ठीक है. So this iteration of global stocktake is 5th iteration. Okay, and this iteration told 8 steps that needed to be adopted in order to limit the temperature rise to 1.5 degree centigrade, which is a target under Paris Climate Agreement. ठीक है. So what are these targets? Each and every target is important for you. Then this will be present in ESI section, ESI notes and sustainable development notes. Okay, in sustainable development notes you will be finding this on page number 25. Okay, next, so these are the 8 steps that the global stocktake in COP28 actually told every country that needed to be adopt this. Okay, so what are these things? Let's understand each and everything, and you have to remember all these 8 steps, because any of the steps can come into the examination. They'll just ask you which of the following steps are not included under 8 steps of global stocktake, and they'll just do a little bit changes in the statement, and you may fall for this. Okay, so always cram these important things. So first thing was tripling renewable energy capacity globally and doubling the global annual average growth rate in energy efficiency improvements. तो 2 चीजें हैं. ठीक है, one is renewable energy capacity, that means solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, all these renewable energies capacity we needed to increase or by triple times by 2030. ठीक है, this is one of the thing. And another thing, that energy efficiency programs that you're going to do in your economy, okay, those things needed to be done in such a format that every year you achieve a higher annual average growth rate. ठीक है, तो ये 2 things हैं, 2 things हैं, you need to cram these things. Next is accelerating efforts towards the phase down of unabated coal power. It's self-explanatory that whatever energy that you're producing through coal, you need to reduce that share in your economy. Okay? Next is accelerating efforts globally towards net zero emission energy systems utilizing zero and low carbon fuels well before or by around mid-century, that is 2050. And one of the most important things about 2050 is that a lot of countries have pledged that they will achieve net zero in their economy by 2050, and that will only be possible if you utilize net zero energy systems in every aspect of your economy. But what do we mean by net zero energy systems? Let's imagine a building. Okay, let's say you have a corporate building. Let's imagine a building, and this building is utilizing X amount of energy. Okay, it's consuming X amount of energy for a lot of purposes, by electricity, by water heating and something else. Okay, but if this building itself produces the same amount of energy, okay, if this building produces same amount of energy, and it can be done through a lot of aspects such as, let's say, solar panels, solar water heating systems, okay, and small wind power generators, okay, all these renewable energy generation capacities or renewable energy generation, products, if those products produces the same amount of energy that this building is consuming, then you can call this building net zero. Okay? Because whatever it is producing, whatever it is consuming, it is producing also. ठीक है? और नेट पॉजिटिव हम किसको बोल देते हैं कि कंजम्पशन से ज्यादा आप प्रोड्यूस कर रहे हो. ठीक है? Then we call such type of building net positive. So I hope you understand what is net zero emission energy systems. ठीक है? Next is transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, equitable manner. ठीक है? And this is self-explanatory that you need to go away from fossil fuel energy system, be it in power plants, be it in transportation. This is what the next thing is. Accelerating zero and low emission technologies, including renewable and nuclear abatement removal technologies such as carbon capture utilization. Okay, so they are saying that you need to adopt zero and low emission technologies such as renewables, nuclear energy, and also you have to reduce the carbon from utilizing technologies such as carbon capture, carbon sequestration and other aspects. Okay? Then they talk about substantially reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions globally. So can you tell me what are these non-carbon dioxide emissions that actually increases the potential of global warming? Anyone? Non-carbon dioxide emissions. Anyone? अरे मीथेन हो गया, methane emissions. Then we also have nitrous oxides and the other emissions. ठीक है? So what they are saying is that we need to first of all reduce other gases. ठीक है? Because these gases have higher global warming potential compared to carbon dioxide. Next thing is accelerating the reduction of emissions from road transport on a range of pathways. Okay? And lastly, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies that do not address poverty or just transitions as soon as possible. In some countries, it usually happens that they provide subsidies related to fossil fuels and other things. Okay? Then the global stocktake in its 8th step is saying that you need to reduce such type of fossil fuel subsidies. ठीक है, जैसे फर्टिलाइजर सब्सिडीज होती है ना, electricity subsidies, all those subsidies, if they are, and they are also mentioning if they do not directly address poverty, तभी आपको reduce करनी है. It's not like that if it as just in India that we provide those subsidies to small and marginal farmers and those are actually addressing the poverty, so we need not to reduce it per se. ठीक है, so these are the 8 things that are important and that's why I took time for explaining it to you. So all these things, rest are the initiatives in general. ठीक है, तो one of the initiatives, all the initiatives will be actually following the 8 steps that the global iteration report actually talked about. So one of the things is transition away from fossil fuel. So nearly 200 countries agreed to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems at COP28. This agreement is the first time countries have taken this pledge. ठीक है, so remember this. Next thing is global renewables and energy efficiency pledge. ठीक है, I've told you one thing that not only they want to increase the renewable energy capacity by 2030, but they also want to increase the annual average growth rate of, utilizing energy efficiency systems. ठीक है, so what you need to do is remember that they need to increase renewable energy capacity to at least 11,000 gigawatt by 2030, and this is globally we're talking about. Next thing is the annual average rate in efficiency improvement from around 2% to over 4% every year until 2030. This is what they are actually talking about. ठीक है, so please remember these 2 things. It can be asked in the examination. Next thing is loss and damage fund. ठीक है, loss and damage fund, its operationalization. ठीक है, and having 800 million funds has been done under COP28. The most important thing for you to remember this loss and damage fund is, first of all, what is its purpose? ठीक है, how much fund it has, and who is handling that fund. So those 3 things are very important. So what is, loss and damage fund is, its objective is what? See, climate change is hampering, threatening existence of lot of countries, such as, let's take an example of low-lying island nations. ठीक है, जैसे Maldives हो गया, and other island nations, they have the, let's say, threat of existence from climate change, and a lot of climate-related disasters, global warming-related disasters, actually put havoc on these economies. So to compensate those economies, loss and damage fund has been established. ठीक है, कि मालदीव में अगर साइक्लोन जो ग्लोबल वार्मिंग की वजह से आया है, अगर उसकी वजह से जितना भी डैमेज हुआ, तो द होल वर्ल्ड थ्रू लॉस एंड डैमेज फंड विल प्रोवाइड relief to these countries. Okay, so this is one of the objectives of loss and damage, and it is right now having 800 million as funds, and it is being handled by World Bank. So these 3 things you need to remember in order to not do any question wrong in the examination. Next thing is global goal on adaptation. So the first thing is you need to understand what adaptation is. Okay, let's read what this says. The draft text on global goal on adaptation introduced in COP28. It aims to enhance climate change adaptation by increasing awareness and funding towards countries' adaptation needs in the context of Paris Climate Agreement. Okay. So first of all, you need to understand the difference between mitigation and adaptation. Anyone? What do you mean by adaptation? Does anyone know about this? See, in adaptation, what we are talking about is, in adaptation, it is different from mitigation. Mitigation only concerns with reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, whereas adaptation involves, okay, building capacity, okay, to live in a climate change world. ठीक है, building capacity to live or be resilient under global warming. And what does this entails? अब आपको पता है कि ग्लोबल वार्मिंग की वजह से there will be a lot of disasters. You need to build capacity to, sustain or, be alive after those disasters. So that involves adaptation. ठीक है? And these two are important aspects under Paris climate. ठीक है? And in Paris COP, ठीक है? वहां पर they've told that this global goal on adaptation was established as an initiative over there, but the framework that what exactly it will be in the global goal on adaptation, those things were needed to be discussed. But in COP28, ठीक है, एक draft text was just published over there with no specific targets being agreed upon by a lot of countries. So it is just at the elementary stage, you can assume, but just have in mind that global goal on adaptation actually talks about what. ठीक है? Next thing is global cooling pledge. So what does this say? 66 national government signatories committed to working together to reduce cooling related emissions across all sectors by at least 68% globally relative to 2020 levels by 2050. So what important thing for all of you is to remember the initiative, remember the targets within the initiatives. ठीक है? 60% वो reduce करेंगे by 2050 and what is the level जहां से वो decide करेंगे कि कितना % reduction करना है, and the level is 2022. ठीक है? But what is cooling related emissions? So a lot of appliances that we utilize for cooling purposes such as refrigeration and ACs, ठीक है? They also generate a lot of greenhouse gases. ठीक है? So they are talking about reducing those amount of greenhouse gases. ठीक है? So please remember these levels also. Next is declaration to triple nuclear energy. So this declaration launched at COP28 aims to triple nuclear energy capacity by 2050. It was endorsed by 22 national governments. Next thing, coal transition accelerator. France in collaboration with various countries aims to, ठीक है, move away with the coal. Next is CHAMP initiative, the full form being Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership for Climate Action. ठीक है? And what does this do? It aims at efficient planning, financing, implementation and monitoring of climate strategies. ठीक है? तो इसमें सब है. And how everything will be, utilized by every country. Let's assume it as a grouping where every countries have the capabilities to not only discuss amongst each other with respect to what climate strategy we can actually utilize to, reduce global greenhouse gas emissions efficiently. ठीक है? It's a platform which enable every country to discuss global strategies and then agree upon it, and then they can also finance it and they can implement it and they can monitor it. So every aspect related to climate strategy is being allowed by CHAMP initiative. ठीक है? तो इसमें एग्जाम्पल है, जैसे लेट्स टेक एन एग्जाम्पल ऑफ मालदीव्स. सो मालदीव्स इफ दे वांट टू इम्प्लीमेंट एनी climate change strategy that they can adopt, or let's say countries of South Asian region, if they work together in order to reduce or have a particular climate change strategy relative that is let's say conducive to their regional environment. Okay, so they can adopt a particular strategy, they can talk about how they can finance it, how they will implement it and how they will monitor it. So everything will be done under this CHAMP initiative. So please remember this. Next is climate finance. So what were the initial targets that were made under climate finance? So initial targets were that we needed $100 billion per year in order to achieve Paris climate targets. Okay, but this couldn't fructify because of a lot of reluctance from West countries, but no issues. But in climate finance in COP28, what was noted that under the new collective quantified goal for climate finance, wealthy nations owe developing countries $500 billion by 2025. ठीक है? So you remember this new collective quantified goal, USD 500 billion in 2025. ठीक है, हर साल 100 बिलियन देना था, ठीक है, एंड द डेवलप्ड नेशन सेज हम नहीं देंगे, एंड डेवलपिंग नेशन सेज दैट it was your countries that actually led the whole world into this situation because you did a lot of emissions during industrial era, so it is your historical responsibility to provide funds to developing countries. Okay, so this is the main argument between these two type of countries in climate change negotiations. Next is powering past coal alliance, and they talk about transitioning away from coal and towards clean energy. Okay, and this is a collaboration of not only government but businesses, organizations also. Okay, but you need not to focus too much onto it because India is not a part of powering past coal alliance. So because India is not ready to go away from the coal anyhow recently, because now we need to first build renewable energy capacity, make it much more efficient, and then only we can think of going away from coal. So this was the major global highlights related to COP28. Next thing is COP29 that you need to remember is that it will be held in Baku, Azerbaijan. So ये question बन सकता है. It can be a question in prelims, and other important question related to major highlights, those can come under either civil services examination, CSIR examination, but also in RBI phase 2 examination. So please prepare accordingly. ठीक है? Next thing is India specific, that what were the India's major positions that happened in the all conferences under COP28. So one of the important things noted under COP28, PM actually had a session on transforming climate finance. Okay, so he talked about two major aspects over there. So one of the aspects is that he voiced the concerns of global south, reiterating the urgency of making the means to implementation, particularly climate finance. So this I've already explained to you, that how a lot of target was already set with respect to what developed countries had to provide money to developing countries in order for adaptation and mitigation, but they didn't provide, and the global south is suffering because of that. So Prime Minister, being India being the leader of global south, actually voiced the concerns of the whole global south. So this was one thing at that point of time. But next, Prime Minister also welcomed the operationalize of loss and damage fund, which we discussed. Okay, just now we have discussed this loss and damage fund, but who remembers what was the amount under loss and damage fund? कितना amount था loss and damage fund में? How many of you remember? What was the amount that we discussed? Yes, correct. 800 billion. Very good. ठीक है, यही small details will help you. Okay, because questions will be there and they'll just change this data a little bit. ठीक है, and establishment of UAE Climate Investment Fund at COP28. ठीक है, and he talked about and he called COP28 to deliver on the following issues. Okay, so these 4 issues were critically talked about by the Prime Minister, so you also need to be aware of it at least. ठीक है, that progress in new collective quantified goal on climate finance. ठीक है, I hope all of you remember this new collective quantified goal. What was this new collective quantified goal? Everyone, just now we've discussed. Wealthy nations owe developing countries how much amount of fund under this national collective quantified goal? We've just now discussed this. कितना पैसा देना उन्हें? They have to provide $500 billion by 2025. ठीक है? Not per year. 500 billion per year नहीं है. 100 billion per year था पहले in 2015 when the Paris Climate Agreement was being talked about. ठीक है, but right now in COP28, ठीक है, they talked about under this new collective quantified goal. Developed countries owe developing countries $500 billion by 2025. Okay? So don't get confused in this. Always remember these key targets. You can again take a look over here. See, wealthy nations owe developing countries US $500 billion in 2025. Okay? So don't get confused. Always be clear, and the clarity will come after revisions. Okay? So this is one of the issue the Prime Minister talked about. Replenishment of Green Climate Fund and Adaptation Fund. These two funds were established under UNFCCC. And can you tell me which organization actually take care of these two funds? Which multilateral development bank actually take care of it? World Bank. Okay? Next, affordable finance to be made available by multilateral development banks for climate action. And what are these multilateral development banks? Apart from World Bank, Asian Development Bank, New Development Bank, and Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, and other aspects. Okay? Developed countries must eliminate their carbon footprint before 2050. Okay, so he talked about 4 issues, and 3 issues were related to climate finance. And last issue, asking developed countries to reduce their carbon footprint by 2050. And that is just to say that fulfill your pledge of net zero that you have committed by 2050. Okay? Let's go to the next. India specific initiatives. So another initiative was Green Credit Initiative. So this initiative was launched by India as a mechanism to incentivize voluntary pro-planet actions as an efficiency response to the challenge of climate change. It envisions the issue of green credit for plantation on waste degraded lands and river catchment areas. The Green Credit Initiative launched at COP28 aligns with Mission Life, which aims to minimize. So what exactly is happening over here? Just like carbon credit program, similarly green credit program will be there. So whatever amount of, let's say, forest you will be building, or let's say river conservation that you will be doing, okay? So all those aspects that you will doing, you will be receiving green credit, and that will help you economically, okay? So these things are related to that only. And this will incentivize not only corporates but other type of organizations to, do environment conservation aspects in order to get green credits. Okay, and green credits will inevitably help them in their ESG governance aspects. Okay, ESG index hota hai na, environment, social and governance. So all those ESG norms, compliances that every corporate has to, comply with, and these green credit program will help them. Next is phase 2 of leadership group for industry transition, Lead IT 2.0. Okay, so this was also, India was a critical member with respect to this initiative. It will focus on inclusive and just industry transition, co-development and transfer of low carbon technology, financial support to emerging economies for industry transition. ठीक है, अब बहुत सारी industries है, they are utilizing fossil fuels, but we have to transition from these fossil fuels to low emission energy technologies. They have to utilize renewable energy technology. So for that specifically industry transition, this Lead IT 2.0 has been launched under COP28. Next is Global River Cities Alliance. ठीक है, the broad idea मैं आपको बता देता हूँ. Global River Cities Alliance में what is actually happening is a lot of, in every country, a lot of rivers are there. ठीक है, for conservation of those rivers, we are actually connecting cities that are located on those rivers, most important cities located on those rivers. Let's say if we are talking about Yamuna, so Delhi we are talking about. In London, if we are talking about Thames River, then in UK if we are talking about Thames River, then we are talking about London city. So all those cities, located on important rivers, okay, they are having collective alliance. And what is the alliance for? So that they can exchange river conservation practices, so that they can exchange how we can actually rejuvenate those rivers, we can and exchange related to reduce the pollution in those rivers. ठीक है, a lot of countries have actually done so they can exchange their knowledge with respect to that river conservation, and that will be implemented in developing countries also, and inevitably it will do what? It will rejuvenate the environment, and it will, for in hope, reduce the global warming. Okay, and rest of the details can be learned. So it was launched at COP28, led by National Mission for Clean Ganga under Ministry of Jal Shakti. Okay, so these are the list of countries that have actually joined this alliance, and as you can see, multilateral development banks are also there, and even knowledge management institutions like KPMG are also in there. Okay, so it's a combination. It's not only a intergovernmental or climate alliance, it's also private also over there. Then it extends the River Cities Alliance, initially established under National Mission for Clean Ganga in 21 in association with National Institution of Urban Affairs. It is a unique alliance covering 275 plus global river cities in 11 countries. ठीक है, तो इतना याद रख लेना. And apart from countries, as you can see, international funding agencies and knowledge management partners are over there. ठीक है, and what they are actually trying to do aims to foster global collaboration for river conservation, sustainable water management. ठीक है. Next thing is Quad Climate Working Group on Localized Climate Action. So what does this tell you? First of all, Quad, I hope every one of you knows that Quad is a grouping of USA, Australia, Japan and India. Okay, and Quad is a a regional grouping in Indo-Pacific region that that involves within itself not only the military cooperation but also a comprehensive cooperation covering people to people contact, even climate. So within their climate cooperation, a lot of aspects that Quad working group is actually discussing so that they can cooperate in the Indo-Pacific region related to climate change. And one of the important aspects that you can utilize is that these countries can exchange a lot of technologies for conservation in the Indo-Pacific region. Okay. Next is Green Development Pact. And what does this say? It provides pathways for nations in their journey towards achieving energy, climate, environment and disaster resilience related objectives. Okay. And one of the important aspects under this pact is tripling global renewable capacity by 2030. So here you have to look in context of that it is India specific initiative. So one of the important, and it is a comprehensive initiative that entails climate, environment and disaster resilience related objectives. Okay. One of the important international initiative that from India is related to disaster is CDRI. Okay. So all those initiatives we need to remember apart from this Green Development Pact. Next thing is highlighting the significance of lending to MSMEs in renewable energy sector. Okay. And what does this say? In COP28, India actually emphasized on the fact that MSME, if we empower MSME through providing finance to them specifically in renewable energy sector, it will develop the aggregate industries or tier 2 industries above the main focus industries of renewable energy. Okay. These will build an industrial base, and also this will help India develop its economy because they employ they provide employment to highest number of people only after agriculture. ठीक है, तो MSMEs को renewable energy sector में अगर finance देंगे हम लोग तो वो industrial base तो तैयार कर ही देंगी, उसके अलावा employment भी बहुत सारे लोगों को provide करेंगे. ठीक है, और employment provide करेंगे तो उससे क्या होगा, per capita income इंडियन पॉपुलेशन की इंप्रूव होगी एट द ग्राउंड लेवल, नॉट लाइक कि इनइक्वालिटी हो रही है, रिच गेटिंग रिचर एंड पुअर गेटिंग पुअरर. ठीक है, दिस विल इंश्योर इंक्लूसिव डेवलपमेंट. नेक्स्ट थिंग इज इंडिया एट मैंग्रोव अलायंस फॉर क्लाइमेट ministerial meeting. Okay, in this, our environment minister emphasized on how we are actually developing mangroves, and he talked about India's recent mangrove program. Does any one of you remember the name? What was the name of mangroves program, mangrove conservation program? Anyone? बजट में भी लॉन्च हुआ था. हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू नो? It is MISTI program. है ना? Next thing is side event hosted at India Pavilion at UN Climate Conference, and they talked about how India is actually building climate resilience through development in Indian Himalayan region. ठीक है? As we also have a mission over there, National Mission for Sustaining Himalayan Ecosystem. ठीक है? So we've showcased with respect to that in the climate conference. And this is India's national statement at COP28. So what is important under this national statement at COP28 for you to remember is these aspects. ठीक है? यहाँ से लेके यहाँ तक आप assume कर लीजिए. जितना भी statistical data है, that is important for upcoming regulatory body examination that you talked about. So India has successfully reduced the emission intensity by 33% between 2005 and 2019. ठीक है? Also, India has achieved 40% of electric installed capacity through non-fossil fuel sources, 9 years ahead of target. Between 2017-2023, India had added 100 gigawatt of installed electric capacity, of which around 80% is attributed to non-fossil fuel based resources. Okay? So these are the important things that you need to remember that can probably come in the examinations, okay, related to RBI as well as other regulatory bodies. So these are the major highlights of COP28. Okay, please prepare them, please revise these things, okay, and most probably a lot of questions will come from this particular document itself. Okay? So if you have any doubt, please ask. Otherwise, let's end this session. No doubt. Chalo, thank you guys for participating. Okay, I hope this helps, and this is a very important topic. Please prepare it accordingly and thoroughly for every examination, and especially for upcoming examination of CSIR case. Okay, so thank you so much for joining. We'll meet in the next session. Thank you.